Welcome back, 5:43. You're watching or listening to Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, a convicted Rochdale grooming gang leader is still living in the UK, an astonishing 9 years after he was ordered to be deported. Ringleader Kari Abdul Rauf was told he would be packed off to Pakistan after serving a jail term for child sex offences. 9 Asian men were convicted in 2012 of a range of sexual offences against children, including rape, trafficking and conspiracy to engage in sexual activity with children in and around Rochdale. Well, joining now to discuss this is the barrister and writer Steven Barrett. Steven, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. The simple question is this: how on earth can a convicted grooming gang rapist still be in Britain 9 years on?
Well, it's a simple question. I don't think the answer is really that simple. We have a domestic procedure to follow. And it's quite clear that that has been used to a huge extent to delay. So going back to the courts to appeal and say, oh, now what about this reason? You can keep me here. Whether we want to keep this system, by the way, is a matter for your viewers and a matter for the demos, for democracy to decide. I do think quite a lot of people are going to be surprised when it gets to sort of February, March, and the EU actually kick off what they're going to do on illegal migration, because they're intending to build very large detention centres in southern Europe, process people in 30 days, and then get them out. Now that's if you want that's quick and effective, and that's what they're going to do. We don't have to have a wholly ineffective and incredibly slow domestic process, but it does look as though we have a wholly ineffective and slow domestic process. What we then did was leave the European Union, so we had to get agreements with countries on our own, but we succeeded in doing that, and our Home Secretary got an agreement with Pakistan that offenders could go back, and yet for some reason that agreement is not being upheld. Now, again, the United Kingdom is not some weak supplicant in this position. We can use our powers of diplomatic leverage in order to make sure that Pakistan obeys international law and obeys that agreement and takes this person back. But we have to recognize, I think, Martin, that there is a percentage of the country who, for political reasons, entirely political reasons, do not want deportations to happen. And we see that, and we see them. There was a young woman who stood up and protested on a plane. We saw a lot of Labour MPs sign a letter to keep another criminal here, and that is they have no doubt very noble and very firm political opinions. They're entitled to their political opinion. I have absolutely none on immigration, but I suspect that there are people with the contra view. There are people who will want these people gone, and they are able in a democracy to get that policy outcome if they want to. And what we've lived through for far too long is a legal fudge in which the word can't has been used far too much. Oh, you can't have this outcome. You can't have this outcome. What they actually mean is we don't want this outcome. Well, if the people who want deportations to happen outnumber the people who don't want deportations to happen, then deportations will happen.
We saw 8 days ago, Stephen, the report into Rochdale came out, the failings of Greater Manchester Police, and it concluded that children are still at the mercy of grooming gangs in Britain. What on earth kind of message does it send out to children, to victims, to survivors, to the electorate, to the taxpayer, that 9 years on, this is frustrated? The legal process is being frustrated by lawyers, by activists. It feels oftentimes that the law isn't there to protect victims, but to protect the perpetrators of crime.
Well, a point I'm starting to make with just more often now is that there is all well good having a lot of written laws down. If nobody enforces anything, then those laws don't exist. And certainly the genesis of the Rochdale outrage and what happened to those poor innocent girls and young women was a breakdown in enforcement and a total unwillingness to enforce the law. And we have seen other instances of the police being unwilling to enforce the law. And that does lead to massive, that is just unjust. So I suspect we are coming to a head where the status quo will not be sustainable. because, of course, maintaining the status quo is also a political position. So I don't want to say I'm against maintaining the status quo. I just think that we're probably going to come to a head where these questions are going to have to be answered, because if we can't deport somebody who does this, then we can't effectively deport anybody. If we don't have a border, we're not a country.
Can I interrupt? The status quo, this will come to a head. How do you mean? What, some sort of civil uprising or a legal kickback? What's it going to take before democracy, the rule of law, is actually enforced? Because a great many people looking at this thinking the law is an ass.
No, and it's not for a middle-aged barrister in a comfortable room to start talking about civil things. But there's always the sense in that this country has democracy, whether people like it or not. I mean, even the House of Lords yesterday was being marginally ridiculous when individual members were calling themselves quite silly things. We have democracy. The demos will win. It will get its outcome. If people want things to happen and vote for it, then it does work. We are still a functioning country.
OK, Steven Barrett, I admire your optimism, but we've seen so many of these cases time after time after time. It often feels that the law is on the wrong side. It's not on the side of these people, these poor children, the victims of grooming gangs in Rochdale, Manchester, Telford, all over the nation. It actually seems set up to protect the perpetrators. Steven Barrett, thank you for joining us on the show. I mean, this. In fact, Steven, can we get Steven back? I would like, if we can get him back, I'd like to talk about this a bit more. Steven, You're still there. Sorry, I think we need to keep talking about this because you talk about the status quo being interrupted. What does that mean? Because I think people watching this show, people want some hope.
Well, we've lived under a political consensus that has been very pro-migration for a long time. So let's take that. Let's think about the Rwanda plan. And whilst that's been operating, it's built up a very complicated, convoluted system of international law, which makes it seemingly, and I say that with much importance, seemingly difficult to sort of enact something like Rwanda or any other scheme that would get rid of illegal migrants. But actually, because of how our legal system works, because sovereignty, with Brexit, sovereignty is returned to Parliament. Parliament can do anything. I mean, there's one of the reasons that, I mean, I don't think I'm being political when I just say that members of the House of Lords were saying things which were silly, in that they are not so obviously not true, that they're just not true. Parliament can do what it wants. And if it wants to take dramatic action in defence of our country, which it may very well choose to do, the people will demand, or may demand, that Parliament takes dramatic action in order to defend our country, then it can be done. And my role will only ever be sitting here saying, yes, this can happen. I can't call for it, and I won't call for it. I haven't got any policy agendas, but we have a remarkable constitution. It's incredibly effective when it actually wants to.
OK, thank you, Stephen, for coming back. I just didn't think we could end the conversation there because you do give me hope. Thank you. I appreciate your time today.